Welcome to the Grumpy Metalheads podcast with the heavy metal strength coach and Shrub 666. Hi guys, and welcome to season 2 of the Heavy Metal Strength Coach podcast. It is episode 1, and I have a very special guest today, and her name is Sumi Singh. Sumi is, she was qualified as a coach in 2005, I believe. Is that correct?
It's been a long time.
Yeah. She's a nutrition specialist, a pre and postnatal exercise instructor, an author. She has a bachelor degree in biology, a master's in environmental management. She's a proud mum since 2007 and is a badass powerlifter, record holder, and metalhead. Have I missed out anything or have I nailed it?
That you definitely nailed it, and I don't think there's a grumpier metalhead than me. So it's perfect for your podcast. You found the grumpiest of them all.
Is there anything that you're grumpy about today?
The fact that I had to do leg day today, yeah, it always makes me grumpy when I wake up and it's like leg day. I'm like, God damn it, again! It's like the never ending.
What did Lyle do to you today?
Well, today we did a bunch. Actually, today was more like accessory works. We did chain work with squats, which isn't so bad. I shouldn't complain. It's actually a lighter day today, so I really shouldn't complain, but I feel like I should complain about it anyhow to keep him on his toes.
Absolutely. So your company name is Sheila Fitness. Where did that name come from?
So the business name is actually named after my daughter because her name translates into strength and confidence. So when I was looking to figure out what kind of name I should build for my business, I think what's the best, what better to name a business after being confident and strong? So it's named after her.
And that, has that been established since she was born, or did you know from beforehand?
That's a great question. Actually, prior to her being born, I actually had a different business name, and I was called the Goddess of Fitness, which is like, I know, a super pompous way to name myself. But what happened with the name was when I moved to Austin from Washington, D.C., there was already a business here in Austin called Goddess Fit. So there were some issues with me using that name here in Austin because there was already a business established. So I just changed it to my daughter's name, which was perfectly fine.
At what point did you decide that you were going to write your book, Mum Strong? Because that's definitely one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on here. I think it's impacted a lot of women, and I'd love to talk about it some more.
So, back when I had Sheila, I was doing, I think, everything in terms of fitness prior to having her. Like I was a group fitness instructor, a boot camp instructor, a dance instructor. I ran, I lifted weights, I did it all. And of course, having a baby kind of upends everything. And I knew that the most transformative thing was to do weight training. That was going to be it. If I was going to get back in shape, that was what I wanted to do. And I found myself retelling the story about how I got back into shape with my clients over and over again. I'm like, you know what? I should probably just write this all down. Exactly what I did. And it's not just, reps and sets and exercises and stuff. It's all the troubleshooting stuff that happens when you're a new mom, when there's so many. I'm sure we'll get into it in this podcast, but I want to say this little, do a little bit of if-then planning, because pretty much everything is going to go wrong and expected to go wrong. And here is a structured way of getting basic strength training in. You don't have to leave your house. It's everything you can do at home. I try to make the exercise really easy to do, and rather than, speaking in my usual brotastic way, just keep it super simple and chunks of exercise throughout the day, because it does add up. I wanted to have a resource for other moms, basically, and I do include meal plans and things like that. So there's nutrition guidance, there's guidance on how to incorporate cardio if that's what you wanted to do, and if you have time to incorporate that. And I really wanted to make it a structured progression so that you stick to it, you get stronger, and you add on as you get stronger, and just how to do that, because we're really not taught that, especially not beginners, especially not moms. Like, we just want the guesswork taken out, and I'm hoping that's what I do in this book.
Thinking back to when Sheila was born, what was it like getting back into training for you? What was your process, and what challenges did you face?
It was really, really hard to get back into training, because at the time I really didn't have much in the way of support. And I did, like I said, I did a lot of things wrong. I had to go back to work in a big hurry. I mean, I think I took maybe 2 months off of work, and Sheila wasn't sleeping well. My ex-husband at the time wasn't really supportive. So pretty much my fitness routine had to take a backseat to life, and my new schedule and figuring all that out. So it took me a while to get back to the gym, which is why I was like, if I want to get back into shape, I am going to have to do something at home. Shyla was very needy growing, like as a baby. Like she breastfed pretty much on the hour, every hour. She didn't sleep. She was colicky. I mean, I was lucky if I get a shower and a 5-minute walk. So it was really hard. I mean, we all had the expectation that we're going to get back in shape and it would be no problem when we're back in the gym in 6 weeks, because that's just, we all hope and think and want. But my reality was just not as such. So it was a real rude awakening to how things were before, because like I said, I was doing it all to how things were going to be moving forward.
And my partner decided that she was going to enter a powerlifting competition about 5 months after Fen was born. And the intent was to get right back into the swing of things.
Right.
Like she'd have, like, it would be tough, but and we're both together and bringing up Fen, so she'd still be able to do it. And then a hypermobility basically like just got so much worse because of all the hormones and the breastfeeding. Sure. And ultimately, like, we decided that it wouldn't be the best thing if she competed at this, because she wouldn't compete as she wants to. I mean, there's times when her ankles are that unstable that going for a walk is a challenge. And it brings the question to mind of how difficult is it to make you a priority when you're doing a postpartum training?
Yeah, right. That's the thing. I think the one thing we don't talk about often enough is how much your former self changes. Like, you no longer become a priority, especially initially, like right after you have the baby. I mean, it was your decision to have a child, so you better be responsible, and you have to dedicate some amount of time to bringing this child up properly. So you do have to make sacrifices. But on the flip side, there are far too many women, and I was included because I have to be the strong, independent women, who decided that I have to do it all. And that was bullshit. Like, I didn't accept help. I never asked for help. I assumed I had to do everything. I was right back to work in 6 weeks. Like, all those things are, and women take it on ourselves, and not our bodies aren't changing, but our mental health was impacted, not to mention women struggle like with self-image, and everything has changed about who you are. So taking time for you is initially almost an impossibility. Now, I wish that would change, but that does take a lot of support. It means you have to ask for help, and your partner is lucky she has a supportive partner in you. And as much as possible, reach out, outsource. If you have the ability to hire somebody to help out around the house, that would be great, just to clean up anything around the kitchen. Because as you're a new father, like, it used to be that perhaps your kitchen was clean and your house was clean and your bed was made. Like, none of that applies anymore. So if that drives you crazy, then that's something you might want to consider if you have the means to outsource. I would say ask for help if you can. If you're lucky enough to have family, like in other countries where the way it's done is that, like in India, where I come from, the whole family gets around and helps to raise the baby. So I was living in America, my parents live in India. My mom came and stayed with me for 3 months almost. And that was extremely helpful. But when she was gone, it's like, okay, well, you're back to being on your own, essentially. So I don't know, I like I said, I was a single mother. It was just really hard to do any sort of self-care at that time. I wish I had, because a lot of women simply just crack, especially if they're struggling already with mental health issues postpartum.
You talk about the importance of rewarding yourself at this time. Can you remember how you would reward yourself in that postpartum period?
I think postpartum, I would do things like, there were just things I barely had the time for. Like, grabbing a cup of coffee with a friend would be a reward for me, because that meant I could be out of the house and away from the baby and just kind of feel like a regular human being. And getting a manicure or a pedicure, just some sort of form of easy self-care. Taking a bath, like I said, I think I was lucky if I got a 5-minute shower in. Things like that. Just trying to feel like, quote unquote, pretty again, if it meant getting my hair done or something. Any kind of self-care that you can take that rewards yourself. And it could be food, if that's your thing. Like, if you want to reward yourself with, I don't know, a cupcake, but I just don't want to get that. That can lead to a downward spiral of always rewarding yourself with food. And there's got to be other ways you find a way to recharge your batteries.
You were back coaching within 6 weeks?
I was back to, well, at the time I worked a quote unquote like regular job, and I did personal training as a side job. So I think I had to go back to my real job within 6 weeks. And then shortly after that, I resumed training. So it was all of a side gig until about maybe 10 years ago, when I did when I fully transitioned to being a full-time trainer.
Okay, well, let's look into that a little bit then. So when you went into that after that long as a personal trainer, what made you decide that you were going to pull the trigger?
That's a great question. One was I was burning myself out by working 60 hours a week in addition to having Sheila when she was very young. And that was I reached a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. I was waking up at 4:30 in the morning to train clients. And then I'd work a regular job from, 9 to 5. And then after that, train clients. I was just completely exhausted. Sure, I was able to pay my bills, but at what cost? And at some point I had enough momentum. I had enough clients going, you know what? Like, why don't you just do this full time? You have enough people who want to hire you, just do it. And that is extremely frightening because that would have been a humongous change in my salary. Because I would go how was I going to pay the bills? It was just extremely scary to me. And like I said, I was a breadwinner. I didn't have support. So at that time, I had to suck up a lot of my ego, and my parents were watching me struggle and said, just take some money from us. Here, you don't have to return it. Just here's the money, take it. You're struggling, you're fighting, just take it. And so I did. And it was the best decision ever. I am pursuing my passion full time and I love what I do, but it took a lot of swallowing of my pride to do what I did initially.
Do you train a lot of pre and postpartum women?
The majority of my clients are not just immediately like postpartum. I do have some online, but it's a mix. Obviously it's a lot of moms, professional moms or busy moms, stay-at-home moms. And these are not the kind of people who they're not interested, thankfully, in, a quick fix or anything like that. They actually enjoy getting strong, which is beautiful. Like they just like training with weights. They like the way it makes them look. They like the way it makes them feel. They feel so much more capable. It's the little things. Like I had a client tell me, like, she goes to Costco, which is a big warehouse store.
Yeah, we got those.
Yeah, right. And so everything is sold in these gigantic crates of stuff. And she's like, yeah, I was able to go to Costco the other day and I just picked up the whole thing by myself. It was no problem. So that's really, that's my favorite type of client. And I'm very, very, very lucky to have women who are like that. And I have a couple of male clients, but these are guys who are in their 50s, and these are not guys who are looking to get big. They just want to stay in shape and all that good stuff. So it really is a good match to my philosophy, because I don't sell quick fix stuff. That's not my thing. I'm not the boot camp queen. I'm not here to beat you up. I'm not here to make you sweat. Like, I just want you to get stronger. That makes me happiest.
I often tell my clients that I want them to be this strong in 5-10 years. I don't need them to be lifting hundreds of kilos. I mean, if they've got those goals, then that's amazing. But if, like, for example, one of my proudest moments as a coach was when my grandma was doing Turkish get-ups after a hip replacement.
Nice.
And to see people have that strength over the long term is an amazing thing. But to take it back to pre and postnatal coaching, what do you think makes a good pre and postnatal coach?
So I think the one thing is to always, always, always listen to your client, because try to remember that the woman who is coming back to training after a layoff is that she is going to be struggling so much with her self-image and her confidence when she's getting back to the gym. Like, I remember looking down at my stomach after having baby. I'm like, what is this? Like, what am I looking at? I mean, because I tend to be very naturally lean. I've maintained a fairly low body weight for most of my life. I mean, I was 112 pounds, which is like nothing, less than 52 kg, and I'm 5'5". And so I was kind of used to always having, a six pack. So, but I knew it, like, I didn't even gain that much. I just imagine, a woman who's gained, 60 or 70 pounds, and all of a sudden she's looking down at a body that's no longer hers. So you should definitely be aware of her physical worries, even if it's not real, like even if it's perceived. I remember I had a client who, she never wanted to get on the ground to do glute bridges. And I was like, that's really strange. It's a simple exercise. It's nothing super complicated about it. She didn't like the position it put her in because she felt like it was a vulgar position to be in. And she didn't want people in the gym looking at her. And if you're not in tune to what they're worried about, or quote unquote, whatever their insecurities are, you're not going to get them comfortable in the gym. And that's exactly what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
So I would say treat her almost like you would come back from an injury. I think that's the best way to approach it. Like, think about all the rehab you have to do if you have an injury. You are not simply going back to the gym after you've broken your leg. You have to do a course of PT. Getting back into the gym might take you a really long time. So keep that in mind when she's coming back in. She could be severely deconditioned, and her former workout, whatever used to, kick her ass before, you might need to take it back a whole lot. Like, if she was able to even lift it, pre-pregnancy at 8 out of 10 of intensity, you may have to start her off at 4 out of 10. super low rep, super high rep and low weights and that kind of thing, just because she's not gonna be able to lift what she thought she could lift. The other thing postpartum is that, like, I can tell you from my own experience, like, I hardly ever slept. So I had zero energy. If you put a postnatal client who's hardly sleeping, hardly eating, you throw her into a brutal workout, that's not going to serve either of you very well. She's not going to leave feeling better. And that's really your goal, is just to make her feel better about her situation. For another postnatal client, if they're breastfeeding, you have to be aware that they may have really full breasts, or their breast might hurt. So you don't want to be doing things that are going to put any impact on her chest. Like, you don't have her benching or any kind of position where she's going to be, pushed up against an object where she feels that pressure on her chest. Another thing is, if she's carrying a lot of excess weight, she is going to have trouble moving like the way she used to move. So getting up and down would be, like, I know when we're in the gym, we're moving our clients around all the time. We're getting them up, we're getting them down. It's part of the routine. You may have to structure your routine such that you have her sitting in one area for quite a while, and then maybe getting her on the floor for a portion of it, rather than having her move around a lot, because she's going to have a really hard time just getting up and down. So be mindful that she's got all this extra weight that's going on. Another thing is, you need to be comfortable with having discussions, and I appreciate you asking this, because you're a male trainer, is you have to be comfortable with having discussions about incontinence. If she's having any pelvic floor issues, like, you may be her first line of defense, and you may notice it when you're doing exercises that she may leak a little bit, and maybe she hasn't addressed that, and that might be something she's going to have to take up with a pelvic floor therapist. You just don't know. So I would say, if you're a responsible postnatal trainer, you should have a list of people you can outsource to if anything comes up that that isn't in your wheelhouse, because you don't want to do any more harm. So basically, treat her like she's a beginner, like she's come back from an injury, and potentially like you may be training an overweight beginner at that too.
When you are selecting exercises, and say they've already been training, and let's say they're really good at deadlifting, would you try and get back to that movement as fast as possible, or would you be doing different variations so that we don't have that relationship spoiled with that lift, as it were?
No, I know. I mean, absolutely start with the easier stuff first. And it could be that you're doing a trap bar deadlift instead of a regular deadlift. You may have to invest in, usually the 45-pound plates are the right height for such a movement, but you may have to invest in rubber plates that are, 10 pounds, 25 pounds, tall, but at the right height for you. And you could do kettlebell deadlifts. You can have her do a deadlift where you're elevating, the weight. If she only has dumbbells, for instance, she could have her stand with 2 boxes on the side that are elevated, so that she's not having to bend as low when she's doing that movement. But there are going to be all kinds of exercises that you can modify so that she feels, comfortable getting back into her usual training. So I know that you said that your wife is a powerlifter, record-holding powerlifter as well, right? Or your partner. So did she train throughout her pregnancy with the powerlifts? What did she do?
That's a good question, actually. I'm just thinking back to what she did. So because my partner is so hypermobile, it came in really early. So she started to suffer with, I think, pelvic dysplasia super early. And so she felt like her pelvis was just splitting in half. So we found that it was sumo deadlifts that were aggravating it after a couple of things. And then so the strength started to go down and down, and she just stopped feeling confident in those movements. And then we brought lots of dumbbells over to the home, because we had an issue where she kept like tripping in the studio. Because she was putting on weight and not as coordinated because of her ankle stability. So we found that it was much safer training in the home, where there were less, essentially, trip hazards. So we had her doing lots of goblet squats to a box.
Exactly.
And things like that.
So now that she's gotten back into the gym, what is she doing for her lifting, or is she still kind of taking it easy?
So what we started doing now is we started doing rack pulls, just to decrease that range of motion in the deadlift. And we've had a few discussions back and forth about this, and the block pull is the first time where a lift has felt really good. And that was excellent. And we were having lots of problems with barbell squats. So now we've made it into a high box squat to allow some load. And that has improved her confidence with that lift a hell of a lot. Suddenly she's starting to feel competent again with that. And
exactly.
Yeah, she's not afraid of the hole in the squat anymore, because she's not having to worry about that anymore.
Awesome. So that's exactly right. You approached it correctly. I mean, that's exactly what I would do too, especially with somebody who's as athletic as your partner. Like, that's exactly how you want to break her, and to make sure that she feels comfortable and competent and leave feeling better about her situation than she came in.
The interesting thing is that she's still benching, and because of that, I wouldn't have thought if I ever did train postnatal women that don't bench onto someone that's breastfeeding. That might not end well, but it's the lift that she still feels strong in because she can arch so much, and she has about that much range of motion. Like, it's sickening.
I'm so jealous.
I'm so jealous of her bench setup. So I think she's the exception to that rule, but I can see how for most women it would be a bad idea to start benching.
I mean, and if they are breastfeeding, it's happened to me in sessions before where a client has been postpartum and she's nursing and her milk lets down in the middle of a session.
Yeah.
So for them, it's really embarrassing, but it's just like, it just happens. It's no big deal. You know what I mean? So if you just let them know, it's okay. You know, it happens. You don't know when it's going to happen. Sometimes the milk becomes so engorged in your breast that they just kind of leak, and it's no big deal. So you kind of have to prepare yourself mentally for that kind of thing happening.
Do you find a lot of postnatal women will when they're first going back into the gym, they think that everyone's going to judge them for gaining a little bit of weight over pregnancy, or is that something that's easily bypassed?
Oh, no, absolutely. Women who aren't postpartum judge themselves all the time. So, like I said, you take such a huge hit in your self-confidence and your body image, especially postpartum when you're coming back to the gym. And even though it's just perceived, they feel like everyone's looking at them, and no one is. Everyone's too worried about themselves. You know, that's just how it is. And imagine if your first experience back at the gym was a bad one, there's no chance you're coming back, especially if you feel like somebody puts you in a position, a trainer puts you in a position to fail. Why would you come back? I'm lucky because I split my training between, now I do it all exclusively at home. So my sessions are very private because people are coming to my home. And so they feel really, really comfortable. And as you know, like when you get in a really private session, you're almost like a therapist. Like people tell you everything. And so people feel, and especially if you're postpartum, any kind of self-confidence, body image issues, people love coming to a private session because they're not worried about anybody else looking at them.
And it creates that safest space.
That's a really big deal with women, not just postpartum though. I mean, I wish that wasn't the case, but we're always so hard on ourselves.
Absolutely. So, and when we're thinking about myths of postpartum training, which of those would you like to fuck off?
Oh my gosh, the number one is the whole 6 weeks. And yes, I want to say six 3 times just because it is a grumpy metalhead podcast. So the problem is, number one, we're told 6 weeks, and I think that's because, at least in the US, we have 6 weeks of paid maternity leave. So we think that for some reason, I don't know what it's like in the UK, how much time you'll get. 8 months, right? Better, much better. So I think the perception is that somehow miraculously, after 6 weeks, you're going to be ready for everything. You're ready for work. You're ready to handle being back in the gym. And keep in mind, I think you just have to prepare for it not working out that way. Like I had the healthiest pregnancy. My doctor loved me. Like everything, I was just super, super healthy. Like all my vitals, they were just so happy to see me. But I had an emergency C-section because my water broke and I wasn't dilating. It was a nightmare, whatever. So pretty much at the last minute, it was a C-section. And that is a big, big, big surgery for a woman. They pretty much cut you open, right? So so because of that, like depending on how well you recover, and sure, I recovered really fast because I was already in shape and my recovery was easy. But for a lot of women, if you have a C-section that you're not prepared for, there is no way you are going to be ready in 6 weeks. And some women have procedures where they have an episiotomy, which I don't know if you know what that is. About that, yeah, it's not pleasant, and they pretty much cut you open from hole to hole to get the baby out, and it is extremely unpleasant in terms of recovery. Like if anything goes wrong, you can have a prolapse. You think you're going to get back to life, but you have to be prepared for things not happening as planned. So I think the 6 weeks thing is the worst one. We've seen a lot of people who, and good for them. Like we have models and actresses and Victoria's Secret models who get back into shape, after 6 weeks, great, but they have access to resources that many of us don't. So the perception from social media is that we should be getting back into shape into no time. And that's bullshit because most of us just don't have that kind of money or even that kind of support. So I think it is really wise to consider that whatever your life was may no longer be in the worst case scenario. So, I mean, everything, your house, from your house to your work, to your schedule, to if the baby's sleeping, everything is going to be tossed out the window in short order. So your schedule is upended basically. So I think that is the one big myth that really needs to die is the 6 weeks one. I do think that's more pervasive in America versus abroad, but we all think that we're supposed to be back into shape, into the gym, in shape, back to work, handling everything, handling the dog, handling the husband, handling the kitchen in no time. And that's another one. And I think the other myth is is about mental health. Because if you aren't in a good place mentally, it's not so easy to work on your body if you haven't really worked on your mind and kind of gotten that together. Because if you haven't addressed postpartum depression, whether it's with medication or with therapy or any of that, like, it's just going to be really hard to dedicate yourself to a program. We've seen it countless times where you have a client comes to you, and this is anybody, come to you initially with some thought that she wants to lose weight or she wants to do this or whatever the case is, but mentally they're just not committed. They're not there, and that's completely understandable. Life happens. People have all kinds of stress going on in their life, and you can sense it, right? When you're interviewing them if you really feel like they're mentally ready or not. And so that's just one thing. I think the mental aspect is something that you might want to consider. Like, God forbid that happens to you, but if you're not in a good mental place, consider that you may have to work on that before you work on your body. So I would say that's the first one, is really giving yourself a realistic time frame for when you're going to be ready to go back to the gym. On the flip side, the other crazy myth that I dislike a lot is that babies just ruin your body, which is, again, bullshit, because you have seen countless examples of women who are in terrific shape after having their baby. I'm 45 now, and I'm in the best shape ever. And sure, it took time. I mean, I'm not saying this stuff is going to happen within even 9 months. It could take years, but if you just stay consistent and dedicated to the process, at some point you're going to be, I think you're going to be happy with what you end up with. So it's the flip side, like I said, of thinking that you're never going to get your body back is bullshit. Because if you think about it, everything you do postpartum is going to require you to be strong. I mean, if you're not figuring out how you're going to incorporate even small amounts of exercise, it's going to be harder for your recovery. So as a mom, I mean, you've seen this because you have a partner who's just had a baby. The mother is, you're lifting the baby in and out of the crib. You are carrying a car seat, and that thing is bulky and huge. Putting the baby in the car seat, taking her out of the car seat for the appointments, carrying groceries, just lifting things. You're going to lift things. You're going to sit on stuff. Like, this is basic movement stuff that you should kind of figure out how to incorporate some kind of exercise, because ultimately it all adds up and you will get back in the shape that you will at some point. Just give it some time. So that's the other one. It's like, the other one is also the perception, and I don't know if it's true in your culture, but at least in Indian culture, the myth that I wish that would die for sure is that if you exercise postpartum, you're going to hurt your milk supply. And this is a real thing. Like,
this is a big one over here too, I think.
It's a bit, it is. Yeah. It's a belief that you are going to exert yourself. You're going to hurt yourself. You're going to hurt the baby because your milk will be impacted by this. And it's just not true. Like, the baby will find a way to get all the nutrients from you. That's what our bodies are made for. It's like, it'll suck the living life out of you, no matter what you're eating and how. I mean, I'm not saying here, green light to go exercise, go run a marathon or compete in CrossFit. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that you can certainly do some basic movements in the house. It is not going to be any detriment to your milk supply. So I think if you could just accept the fact that things will take time and there is no harm in incorporating even small movements, it's going to add up, and that is going to ultimately make you stronger. And once you're there, and once you get back into some kind of rhythm of life, it happens ultimately. For me, it took probably a year to get, back to really where I felt like I had some kind of semblance of a life. And that was a long time, things got back to normal at some point. So I think that I don't want to say that it's never going to be the same, but, give yourself time is what I want people to, I think, take away from that whole discussion there.
Can you remember at what point you realized, fuck, I feel strong all of a sudden?
I feel strong all of a sudden?
Yeah, let's say in the gym. Like I don't mean like in the home, because that's demonstrating strength all the fucking time. But when you first were, I don't know whether it was a deadlift session, something like that, where you're like, yeah, I'm back.
That point took me at least a year. I mean, maybe more. And I want to say it was when Sheila was done nursing, and beyond that, when I really felt like, I finally have my body back. Because, it's horrible. And we're going back to the discussion about how we feel about our bodies. But there came a point where I just felt like I was a vessel for breastfeeding and burping, like that's all I was.
My partner just says, I'm just a boob now.
Yeah. That's kind of what you feel like. You're like, geez, your body is no longer your own. I think that can be a very real feeling for women. And once once the baby's grown a little bit, and she's a little bit more upright and alert and not entirely dependent on you for food, you kind of take this big sigh of relief. I know I did.
Yeah.
Like,
and you're working on your own goals again, and
exactly
feeling as if you're just this feeding machine, and you can get strong again, and all these beautiful things. Something that's really big in the UK is that pregnant women are just taught to do yoga.
Yoga and stretching, which is terrible for, like, for instance, I'm not saying it's terrible in general, but like for instance, your partner who's hypermobile, like that would be a terrible idea to have her, listen, just stretch postpartum. That's all you need to do. Like that is terrible advice, because for somebody like her, she's going to get hurt doing that. So yeah.
Is that something that's pushed in the US, or are they slightly ahead on this?
Well, I'll take it from the perspective of being Indian, but like I said, for my culture, the less amount of things you can do, like walking should be as strenuous of an activity that you do. From my perspective, that's what we're told. And I'm Indian. That's what I was told. Like, just walk. That's all you have to do. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I was that mom who was like, I was training all throughout my pregnancy. Like, I was able to run. I taught fitness class. I literally taught a fitness class the day I delivered. That's, I had a really fit pregnancy, but I'm like, listen, my mom was just like, what are you doing? I'm like, I've done this for how long? Like, I'm not saying that's everyone needs to do, but that's certainly what I was able to do. So, going back to the discussion about myths, there are two other important ones that regarding about prenatal training and training throughout your pregnancy that I wish would go away. One is that if you get pregnant and you want to start an exercise program, you are told, don't do it. Just wait until after the baby. And that's, again, terrible advice, because you can certainly do something. Like I said, postpartum, you're going to be doing a lot of stuff with your body. Lifting, bending, carrying, and especially as the baby gets bigger. So you better be doing something, even if it's small, as you get started. Like I said, think about like 4 out of 10 out of intensity. That's it. It doesn't take much, like especially if you're extremely new to training. Like at least start something, and you can probably even make gains if you're new. And
when people say that they need to be fit enough to start with a coach, it's not. To me, it sounds like the perfect time. To start with a training program, because this is the time where you're going to need the most strength in your life.
Exactly. So don't put it off. Like absolutely don't put it off. This is not the time of your life to push to failure or anything of that crazy stuff. Like that can wait. Like it kind of drives me a little bit batty when I see women ask questions like, I don't want to give up, XYZ. I don't want to give up, like if they're a CrossFitter, they don't want to give up Olympic lifting throughout their pregnancy. I'm like, but can you not wait 9 months? Your body is changing so much with the change in center of gravity. Like just imagine having to do a snatch when you're trying to pull that bar over your belly. It just doesn't work anymore. Like you can risk actually doing physical damage to the fetus by performing some of these movements.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a myth to take it the other way, that training doesn't need any kind of adaptation in pregnancy as well.
You should certainly be changing the movements. Like, let's say you just can't live, like perhaps your partner was this way, like you just can't live without the barbell movements. But like I said, make adjustments. If she's, really into bench pressing, but for some reason can't, you can move that to an incline movement. If for some reason she's the kind of person who's like, I just love doing push-ups, there's always somebody, but you can't put her on the floor. Like, you're going to be bumping that belly into the floor. So have her do like a wall push-up or a countertop push-up. Just make adjustments as she grows. Because the center of gravity thing is really, really big, and depending on how much you gain, like, I don't know how much your partner gained, but you start to lose balance. So things that you think are like, oh, super easy. Why aren't you able to do a step up? Why aren't you able to do a split squat? Well, her balance is completely off. And, that's just one, you'll have to make those kind of modifications, which if you're a good coach like you are, and you'll be able to do it. Plus, you've seen it firsthand because you've walked your partner through her pregnancy as well. So you've seen the changes firsthand.
I think it's a good time now to move on to one of the loves in your life. Well, I think it's loves. It might be hates. Certainly with me, it's love and hate. Powerlifting. So, Sumi, tell me about your relationship with powerlifting.
So, for many, many, many years, I was, I did bodybuilding basically. Like I was just interested in the physical aspects of how I looked. Early on, this is like prior to Instagram and all this nonsense, like there was this thing called fitness modeling. And I was quote unquote discovered in a gym, right? And I remembered it was for, of all things, a yoga fitness. Like I've done a couple of fitness apparel shoots now in my life. Now I'm older, but I remember the first one was a yoga shoot. So for a really long time, I really just focused on what I looked like. And then when I hit 40, I was like, I'm too old for this shit. Like I'm not going to be dieting. And like, I just was so over it. And I said, and I always loved lifting weights, obviously. And I always loved being strong and all that. So I figured, you know what, I want to powerlift because it's a pure strength sport. Nobody cares about abs or how you look. It's just about what you can do. And this, I know I ranted on social media earlier, but this is actually where it's a good thing, because I saw so many women who were older than me, all different shapes and sizes, who were lifting and like absolutely loving it, because powerlifting is the one thing where for a woman, if you go to your first meet, even if you're just squatting the bar, like everyone is stoked for you. It is such a supportive community. Like I've just every single meet you go to, you feel so welcome. Like I've never had a bad experience, and it could be because I compete with a lovely organization, which is the USPA, and it could be that.
You know what? I've spoken to powerlifters across the world, and they all say this. No one has ever said that the powerlifting community is something that's toxic or something that's not just full of people that want that bar to move upwards, that shout up as soon as the bar starts slowing down, and would take off their own knee sleeves and lend the person in front of them if they didn't have them or something happened like that, and contrast so much. So I've competed in bodybuilding, I've competed in powerlifting, and the two communities are so different, even though people will dabble in both, and I think it's because of how hungry bodybuilders are.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, it's a lovely sport. And I think bodybuilding is so subjective. Like when you're looking at somebody and their physique, it's like, well, you can come up with any opinion on what they look like, and tell so and so that they need to work on X, Y, and Z. But it's completely different in powerlifting. It's objective. There are judges, and we have rules, and I think it's completely fair in comparison to a sport like bodybuilding, which I think is, I'm not going to say it's unfair, but there's probably some amount of politics there and subjectivity. So, but no, I've always felt super welcome. And I just love that more and more women are now competing in powerlifting. I think it's great. Like there are now, I don't know what it's like over where you compete, but we have like all women's meets, which are really cool. That just shows you how much the sport is growing.
We have all female British championships and English championships. I'm not sure on any regional championships that are all women. I'm sure they do exist. I'll have to look into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Did you ever consider a different strength sport, like around when you decided to take powerlifting, or was it love at first sight?
No, it was definitely, I always loved the barbell lifts. My entire lifting training, personal training career has been based around, basic strength training and barbell movements. I never bought into the hype of, whatever fad there. You and I have seen fads come and go. Like for a while it was TRX and then quote unquote functional training. And like, there's just always something like that, you see come and go, but I've always just believed in basic strength training. The rules and the way things work haven't changed in the decades I've been doing this. Like how you get stronger is really not that much of a mystery. And I think I've always naturally been good at things like upper body. My upper body has always been super strong for some reason. When I was in high school, I did track and field, and I didn't do running. I was actually a thrower. I did shot put and discus. So I've always been like super strong on top. So benching came naturally to me, and I'm a terrible squatter. You've seen how I'm built. Like, so I figured I had to figure out the other two lifts, like squatting. I had to kind of start from square one, because when I went to my first meet, I had an online coach, and Lyle went with me to handle me at the meet. And he wasn't my coach at the time, but when he saw me squat, he's like, you know what, if you're going to squat like that, I'm going to have to take over this whole thing. So I really had to start from scratch with him, which, as you know, the way he is, like, he is very demanding in a good way, but if he sees flaws in technique, he will make you strip down just to the bar and start all over again, which was fine. I knew, like with everything in fitness, I figured this was going to be a long process. I knew it wasn't going to be like 3 months to a meet. Like I figured this was going to take time. So it did. And I've changed a lot in the way I at least train myself. But at the same time, I don't expect any of my, general population clients to really do what I do. And I wouldn't force what I like on them, because their goals are different from mine. I'm glad I've made the decision to compete in powerlifting. I don't know if I'll ever look back, but we'll see.
Absolutely. So how have you progressed in powerlifting? Where are your lifts at now? Tell me about the records that you've got as well.
Yes,
I've talked about my records in this. Like, at least you can do is tell me about a couple.
Well, I'll tell you about what I pulled at my last meet, because that'll make sense. I think the most sense. I think at my last meet, I benched. So I compete at 52 kg, which is 114 pounds in the master's age group. So I got 172 on bench, I think a 225 or 226 on squat, and 353 on deadlift. These are all in pounds, so I'm not sure what the kgs are.
They'll have to do that maths later.
Yeah, so
I couldn't navigate time earlier. I'm not going to be able to convert in my head.
Basically, I think so. At least for deadlifting, I know I'm a triple bodyweight deadlifter, which is I think as simple as I can cut it down to. And I've also competed in a lighter weight class. I competed in so it's 52 kg, and I think the lighter one is 48 kg, which is really light. for my height, like I'm positively skeletal at that body weight, but I hold, I think it's the world, quote unquote, world record and the national records, and definitely not in squat, but in bench and in deadlift both. So that's in a different age class, or sorry, weight class as well.
And what achievement in powerlifting are you the most proud of?
You know, what's really funny, like, I don't know, I'll send the video to you or tag you in it, but at my last meet, you know, when you're setting world records, you get four attempts. Like I don't know if your readership is familiar with it, but basically in powerlifting, you get a total of nine attempts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And each progressively, well, as it should be, progressively heavier in each of the lifts. So you have the squat, then you move to the bench, then you have to the deadlift. And if you're setting a record, which I was actually at this last meet, in each category, you're allowed a fourth attempt. So at my fourth attempt deadlift, which I did not get, we had 365 pounds on the bar, and gosh, it's got to be 150 something kg. I can't do math for you, but I didn't get the lift. But if you watch the lift, I fought with that bar. Like, I got it all the way up, and I was here with my shoulders rounded. I could not bring my shoulders back. But I fought with that bar for, I swear, a minute. People got tired of cheering.
I think empires have risen and fallen in shorter times than you held onto that deadlift. I don't know how your eyes stayed in your head.
Dude, it was like, I think I held my breath the entire time. It is a miracle that I didn't pass out. I mean it's funny, if you listen to the video, you can hear people starting to cheer, but then they're like, did they get tired of cheering? Because like, bars, she's not going to let go of that fucking bar. And I'm like, nope. And the only reason why I put the bar down was I start to slip, my pinky started to slip from the grip. And anyway, at some point they time you out of the lift. Like, you get a minute to complete the lift, but my pinky started to slip, and I did not want to drop the bar. I know it happens sometimes, but I did not want to be that person dropping the bar on the platform, because that's just frightening, you know?
Yeah.
It happens sometimes, but I don't want to be that person. So I just put the bar down and just, I think everyone was pretty much speechless. They're like, yeah, we've never seen anybody like with that much grind. It's pretty crazy. I know, even if I didn't get the lift, I swear, the amount of grind I had, it blew my own mind, because I didn't think I would be that dumb to not do it like that.
Well, that brings me to another little topic before I ask you about mentors. In that, when I'm talking to my lifters, talk about all lifters are idiots on competition day, and it's basically my job to tell my lifters to sit down, stop warming up 40 minutes early when they're going back and things like that. So my question is, what are you like on competition day, and does it get better over time, or do you still need Lyle to tell you to sit the fuck down?
No. So competing is absolutely a skill. It is absolutely a skill. Like, your first meet, I think you should go strictly just to have fun, because I screwed up so much. I think I missed like 2 or 3 commands. So obviously that didn't go well, but I had so much fun. I just had because every time I didn't do something right, some other lifter was like, don't worry, we did the exact same thing. Like, I remember I started the bench command too soon, stuff like that. Like, or I racked the bar too soon on squats, stuff like simple stuff that everybody does. So in that sense, competing is a skill. It truly is. And with every single meet, like, sure, do I get the nerves? Absolutely. But that means you care. Like, if I didn't feel a little bit concerned about the outcome, something is really wrong. Like, you should care. You should care, because he put in like how many months of work to get to this point. But Lyle will absolutely tell you, I am a complete robot. I am a machine on meet day. Like, I have one singular goal, and that's to lift the damn thing. Like, I don't care what's on the bar. I treat the warm up as heavy. Like, even if it's not heavy, I treat every single repetition like it's all heavy. Like, I treat the warm-up as if it's a heavy weight, and they all get equal treatment. I approach the bar the exact same way. I am a fucking robot. Like, there is going to be nothing that gets in between me and that bar, like, literally. And I see nothing but just, that one thing to do. So, I mean, you'd say that I've pretty much taken my brain out of my head and set it aside for the day, and I pick it back up later. So
is it a very different you on competition day, or is it just an extension of you?
Totally. Well, at least in the gym. I am not an overthinker. I'm definitely an executor. I never want to know what's on the bar, because I want to treat all the lifts equally. And I just want to be robotic and completely the same throughout each and every movement. I've had to work a lot, because I'm not built for a lot of these lifts, like especially squatting and I mean, deadlifting is a lot better because I've, learned to lift the way I lift, which is pretty unique too. But I've had to work a lot on my mental attitude and the way I recover, the way if I quote unquote fail at something, like reframing, I've had to work a lot on that, just on how when I treat myself after I've done a lift that I may or may not be happy with. And that's gotten so much better over time, but that's taken a lot of mental work, I think. I love to read, as you know, I'm always sharing my favorite books on the subject. So I think the mental game is huge for somebody like me who may not be at the best of the physical abilities, but if you can combine a really good attitude, when you're in training, pretend like you're in the meet. Like in training, act like you're still at the meet. Like it should matter as well. Like put all your effort. If you push yourself super, super, super hard in training, the meet is almost an afterthought because you've done it already. You know what it's like to think in the mindset of, okay, meet day is coming. So as much as possible as you can mimic in training what it's like on meet day, the better off you'll be. And we do that in training. We'll have like mimic days prior to actually competing, and go through the commands many times and training.
Is it true that Lyle will like intentionally like take the bar like back in to make sure that you're ready for any kind of mistakes on the competition side or your side, and that's really important to be prepared for anything?
Totally. Yeah, no, I mean, he's done things like, on purpose, like he will misload a bar. So I'll be walking up to the bar ready to do my lift, and he'll be like, lift or stop. And because this happens sometimes at meet where they misload the bar, it's very rare, but can happen. And so you have to be prepared for the inevitability of something going wrong too. So stepping away, like you may be right in the zone and super ready to lift the thing, but all of a sudden, snap, something happens. So you need to like get right back into it if you've had a distraction.
As a coach, that's a genius move to say that a misload was intentional. I think I'm going to feel that one. No, I know that it will be intentional with Lyle. So I think talking about Lyle so much does lead me into the question about like the important mentors in your life. So is there anyone that you want to give a shout out to? Anyone that's helped you along the way? Anyone that's just a badass that you really admire? Sumi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving me that opportunity. So I've been in this industry a long time, and I think the very first person who I connected with in this industry is Will Brink. I don't know if you know who he is. He's one of the older guys, and he had this book called Bodybuilding Revealed, and he had a really good forum, and it was a paid forum back in the day when we had paid forums for bodybuilding. Like I know that's not a thing now, and everything is on Facebook, and so things have changed, but he had a really good forum, and I liked what he wrote, he liked what I wrote, and he was the first person who encouraged me to, start writing and putting things down on paper, all the lessons I'm learning. And because like you have a way of expressing yourself in writing, and I think you should put that down. So I started to write for his website, and that led to actually other opportunities for writing. So I wrote for a supplement review company, which has now gone out of business. But so that really opened the door for a lot of things. And from there, I obviously learned about people like Tom Venuto. So if you're like being introduced to the industry, and if the very first bro book you ever read is Burn the Fat, Feed the Muscle, it is such a good book. Back then, we didn't have this. It's such an annoying thing, but like now, everyone talks about quote unquote evidence-based training or whatever. Like that's the thing to say, right? But Tom was doing that well before, anybody absolutely. Else. So his book was, I think, super informative. My thought process really could have gone any way, and I'm glad it started off with those two books. And from Will's forum, obviously, I learned about Lyle. So, and I got into all of his books. And again, he has a way of writing, and communicating information that's super unique. Like he will take topics that are really difficult to understand and, boil it down to, I think if you want to learn, he is always willing to help. That's the one thing I just love about him. Like you can go to his group and you can be one of the people who gets butthurt over him by, him telling you the way it is, or you can shut up and learn. So Lyle was actually the first person who, I've known him for like 15 years now. So, not only have we been, coach athlete relationship, but we've been friends for a really long time. And he was the first person who said, listen, why don't you write this book? And he was the reason why I wrote Mom Strong. He said, just write it. Like you have enough information. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to film and blah, blah. I had every excuse right at the time. So I said, look, I will take care of the videos and the editing and the pictures and everything. So he took care of all the videos he did, all the pictures he did, and he edited the book. So he was really, really instrumental in me putting my thoughts on paper. So that was huge for me. Again, like putting a product out there, it's just so if you can put your thoughts onto paper, it's super valuable as a trainer. You're not having to repeat yourself constantly. You have a resource, to your clients that you can give them here. This is what I did. There's no reason why it won't work. Even though the book is marketed to new moms, it's really a beginner strength program for anybody who wants to stay at home and train for the most part. So, but yeah, no, Lyle was obviously hugely instrumental. if I did not have him, I don't think I'd be powerlifting the way I am now, because Lyle obsesses about stuff on a level that I could never. Like, I probably would have killed myself a long time ago. I probably would have injured myself a long time ago, because initially I just had this big, huge ego about lifting the most amount of weight, right? Which is really dumb. And yeah, exactly. And that's really what I was like. I just wanted to be the most macho person in here. And he was like, listen, this isn't going to work. You know, you're 40 years old. You know, when we started doing that, he's like, he had a big picture in mind, long term, that I hadn't at the time. So like I said, he's on point about everything. He will obsess about stuff in a way that I can't. So, and he worries about every single last detail. So he's really been influential to me in both my writing and in powerlifting. And I know he gets a bad rap, and I'm sure you've seen this, but you know, if he didn't care so much about women, and I've seen this because I've known him as a friend too, is like, he genuinely cares about helping women. That's why he wrote a fucking book on it. I mean,
well, wrote it about 3 times, didn't he?
Right. I mean, he cares so much about women that he wrote a whole book on it. I mean, he knows more about the menstrual cycle than many of my friends do, about their own bodies. So it's just, he puts a lot of care into it. And you see it in his group, because you're a member of his group, is if somebody wants to learn something and they genuinely have a question, he always gets help. He tags in people who are OBGYNs or physical therapists. Like, he will, if he doesn't know the answer, he'll find somebody who does. And that's kind of what any good coach would do.
I can honestly say that I wouldn't be the coach I am today without many of his articles and learning from him. I mean, there was a great series about American weightlifters in there, and just some of the nuggets of information there in terms of how you coach someone, like in a real life way, was really incredible at the time, and especially as a young coach, it really formulated how I was going to go about training people, and you can tell he's been on the floor and has done that over time. So yeah, I think it's a great place to end talking about his influence over the industry, and I think he's often misunderstood, and he's got such wonderful information out there that people should definitely get into it.
He's like me. He's old, and we both are terrible at marketing and Instagram and all that stuff. And what the kids are doing nowadays is like something I don't know if I could ever do. Like, and so that kind of puts us both at a disadvantage. But he is just totally a wealth of information, and it is a shame how he's gotten so much shit from people over the years. Like,
it is. But you're both badasses, and you're definitely not going to be getting any bad mouth in here. So long may you both continue to be absolutely badass. And Sumi, thank you so much for joining me. It's been amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.